I will introduce now Uziel Méndez, and he's the president of Michigan Tech Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, who is pursuing a bachelor's degree in biomedical engineering, and with the opening remarks. So with that, que lo disfruten, enjoy.
Before I begin tonight, I'd like everyone to acknowledge Madeline Mercado-Volker. She has been the lead coordinator for this event. She has worked very hard to secure funding so that all of you may have a free meal tonight, and as a student, I know how valuable that is. So if everyone could please take a moment to give a round of applause. So as Maddie and I discussed tonight's event, she gave me a very open-ended criteria for tonight's speech. She's told me, talk about your experiences, what it's like to be a Hispanic, what it's like to come from a migrant worker background. And you know, this is a very open-ended criteria, so as a tech student, as a techie, I decided to resort to something that I'm more familiar with, and that is science. So for all of you non-science majors out there, don't worry, I won't go too in-depth. But for most of us that are science major, I want you to recall back to that first physics class you took, mechanics. If you remember some of those problems that told you to disregard certain variables, that is, pretend you have a massless rope and the frictionless pulley that everybody worked with. Now, we can all kind of see why this is the case. If you take out certain variables, it makes it easier to solve a problem. But you can't apply physics 1 to the real world, because you'll get in a lot of trouble. So how is that relevant to tonight's talk? Well, I'm sure you're all familiar with the American model. That is, if you have the abilities, if you work hard enough, you can compete with anyone you want in any field. And I hope to convince you tonight that, although I agree with this model, there are other variables present, other variables other than hard work and abilities that can determine whether or not a student is academically successful and has a successful professional career. Now, in theory, if all things were equal, if everybody had the same educational opportunity, the same quality of education, and parents with the same desire for their children to succeed, then yes, I would agree, everybody would have equal opportunity. But as a scientist myself, and as a scientist that many of you may be or may become, the truth is that reality doesn't always listen to our theories, and it can be very frustrating in the lab. People don't pick where they are born, and nobody is born in the same place. That is, nobody starts in the same location. So I'd like to share with you tonight a couple of those variables that I've experienced, some of those obstacles that have been a factor in my education. First of all, first and foremost, the most obvious variable was language. So as I stand here before you tonight, I'm able to communicate my thoughts, my feelings. But the truth of the matter is that up until 3rd grade, I was not very fluent in English. I was born in Southern California, but I was raised in a Spanish-speaking household. My teachers, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, were bilingual, so they let me turn in some of my assignments in Spanish. But by 3rd grade, I had an English-speaking only teacher, and I did not know how to speak English fluently. Needless to say, it was a very tough year for me, as tough as it gets for a 3rd grader. And those of you that have traveled abroad may understand what it's like to be in a country or in a setting where you don't understand the language. It is harder to understand some of the concepts, and it is definitely harder to succeed academically. Now, if language wasn't enough, the definition of a migrant family worker is that they travel, and they travel a lot. I currently have an aunt that's living in Florida, just finishing the orange picking season. She will be moving to Michigan soon to bake apples and blueberries. Now, that's not a big concern. The concern, and my concern, is that she has a 6-year-old son who's just starting elementary school. He had to start kindergarten in Michigan, move to Florida, continue his education there, start 1st grade in Florida, and then come back here to continue 1st grade. Now, if anybody moved at all during elementary school, you can see how stressful that is. School isn't only an academic place, but it's also a very social place. So every time he moves, he's going to have to make new friends, get to know the teachers, and get to know the struggles of that certain environment, only to move again within a couple months. With this type of education, this segmented education, you can see how he's always behind his assignments. He might become discouraged. Why should I do this assignment if it's going to be late anyways? And bad grade. I don't think I have to explain anymore why constant moving would affect someone's education and someone's opportunity to succeed academically. The last thing I'd like to point out, and I think is the most important one, is that of environment and role models. So I'm sure you've all heard about the nature versus nurture debate when it comes to intelligence. But I'd like to stress tonight that nurture affects other things, that being motivation, self-image, self-worth, and future plans. Many of the students that I grew up with, many of the migrant family workers, are very familiar with the American model. They know and they've heard that if you work hard, you can achieve it. However, very seldomly do they see this happening. Very seldomly do they see role models coming back that have achieved high academic success or high academic professional development, have achieved high professional standards. And therefore, they lack role models. They don't know what it's like to have a PhD. They don't know what it's like to pursue an MD. As a personal example, after I finished my freshman year here at Michigan Tech, I went back to school, got a job as a lifeguard, and there I met a student who wanted to be a surgeon. I scoffed at him, you can't be a surgeon, you gotta be a genius. I personally had never met a surgeon. I didn't know what a surgeon did on his off time. I met doctors during medical examinations, but never personally, never knew someone that had an MD or a PhD. And it wasn't until the fall of my sophomore year here at Michigan Tech that I joined the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. I still remember that first meeting in the room downstairs. There was only about 4 or 5 of us surrounding a lukewarm Little Caesars pizza.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. But that small organization gave me the opportunity to meet other people, the opportunity to go to a national conference. I attended a national conference that fall, and it was there that I met other people from Stanford, MIT, Yale, that I realized that they weren't geniuses. They didn't have books memorized. They couldn't list any fact off the top of their head. Sure, they were smart. They knew what they were doing, but they worked hard. And it wasn't until that moment that I truly and honestly believed in the American model. It wasn't until that I finally met students from these places that were doing great things that I finally believed, hey, I can do this. And if it took me so long to finish my freshman year of college here at Michigan Tech, I know there are students out there that have no idea that they can achieve what they can achieve. So if they are going to achieve, and if it is our duty to make them believe, then that is the first thing we must do, is to make them believe that they can do what they want to do. If there is one message, though, that I don't want you to take with you tonight, that is, I am not seeking to victimize Hispanics. I am not looking for pity. I am not looking to, put Hispanics in a bad light. Oh, we have it so hard. That is not what I'm looking to do. My point tonight is to share my experiences for understanding, but also to think and realize factors in other people's lives and in other groups that may affect their success academically and professionally. As a final example, during my senior year of high school, I was accepted into the Grand Rapids Youth Symphony. Now, there was a $150 fee to enter, and at the time my parents didn't have the money, so I had to work a job picking blueberries for about a month. And if anybody has ever picked blueberries for fun, let me tell you, it's very different than picking blueberries as a job. I was a beginner and had very slow hands, so I could only make about $4 to $5 an hour. And I worked that job for a full summer to raise $150 to join the Grand Rapids Youth Symphony. My friend on the other side was doing a lot better off economically. However, she had other variables in her life that made it difficult to be in the same place that I was. Her parents were going through a pretty rough divorce, and she had a lifelong condition, type 1 diabetes. However, she did not seek to be pitied or victimized herself. She wanted to be accepted into the symphony because she could play the cello, just like I wanted to be accepted into the symphony because I could play the cello. Not because of where I came from, but because I had what it took. So my point here tonight is that we all have our struggles. We all have something to overcome. And though some of us may have more struggles than others, everybody had someone that helped you along. Everybody has someone that helped you get here today. I was lucky enough to have certain variables to counter some of these obstacles that I encountered. For one, my parents always encouraged education. Two, I had great teachers. In the third grade, when I was struggling learning English, my professor was very patient with me and he understood my situation. I had a friend when I moved to Michigan who encouraged me to apply to a better high school. And everybody in this high school, about 90% of the students went out to college, so I followed along. I was lucky enough to have role models and certain people that I could look up to and could tell me what to do. Finally, SHPE gave me the opportunity in the last final step to honestly and truly believe in what I could do. Now, it would be very selfish of me to walk away from Michigan Tech, keeping all this to myself. So I'm looking to help others, and I'm working through the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers to give that opportunity to others that I didn't even know I had. And I encourage all of you, through whatever variables you encounter or obstacles, to go back to your community, because nobody's going to care about your community more than you will. I'd like to end tonight with a quote by a great man, and it goes something like this. We cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others for their own sakes and for our own. That was spoken by Cesar Chavez. Thank you very much for your time.